All right.
It's okay. You can go live because we're going to play the video.
Yeah. Right. And we didn't do anything wrong, right? We didn't throw anything out or anything, right? We didn't accidentally.
Okay, let's take this off.
Okay.
So it's on air now.
Mm-hmm. My microphone's not on. Turn audio off.
And I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect. Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die. Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay. You ain't about it, we moving out. We go and get it and get it. Pull up in Romans like Robbers and Porsches that. running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect. Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty. Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
And then I'm Aisha.
You ain't about it, we moving out. We go and get it and get it. Pull up in Romans like Robins and Porsches, them engines is bigger and different.
And make sure the sound is off. And hook it up.
The kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect.
Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on low jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
You ain't about it, we moving out. We go and get it and get it. Pull up in Romans like Robins and Porsches, them engines is bigger and different.
Okay, keep myself muted. Okay. And
running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect.
Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty.
Put your hands up, everybody knows that. Don't hold back, got you on low jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
You ain't about it. We moving out. We go and get it and get it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear me. If you guys can hear me. Hey, Aisha, can you hear me?
Hey, yes.
Why can't I hear you? Turn up that.
Can you hear me?
Let's see if that's where my volume is. But Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, I can. It was going through my TV. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Hello, everybody. We're so excited. Thank you. You sound perfect. You guys, happy Thursday? Happy COVID Thursday. All right. So in terms of what we're going to do, we're going to get started right now, if that's okay. So we are Team Hero of World Financial Group Agency. And you guys, our dream is to change the world through education. And that's why we created the Black Wealth Matters series. And we keep this as an ongoing series to introduce all Americans to industry experts to share the history, present, and the best path for the future. And my name is Saria Rigo. I'm a financial advisor with Transamerica Financial Advisors and an insurance agent with our sister company, World Financial Group Insurance Agency. I thought of this series after George Floyd's murder because I realized that, you know, it's not just financial education that we need. It's really all of it. And I brought this idea to my amazing and diverse team. And together we found the most dynamic people, like the wonderful woman in front of me, in the country, leaders in all facets of areas that impact everyday life that you might not even be aware of. So for today, you'll hear from State's Attorney of Prince George's County in Maryland, Aisha Braveboy. And you're going to hear about the history, present, and the future of voting and why it's so important to protect our vote. And then afterwards, I'll share with you the story of our company and some financial strategies that you can share and use moving forward. So during the event, you can type questions in the chat room over there. And also, if you look in the sticky note, there's Aisha's campaign. So please feel free to register to donate to her campaign, as well as registering to vote if you're not registered. At the end, we'll have a survey. Take the time to complete the survey. And if you're going to do any social media marketing, which we absolutely suggest you do, please use the hashtag BWM series. So let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to just take a second and introduce Aisha. So Aisha and I have known each other for over 20 years, easily over 20 years. And, you know, like most people who meet when they're young, you know, we have the most fun relationship. And I just always thought of her as my girlfriend. And it wasn't until we started talking about this series and I mentioned it to her. She was actually the first person I mentioned for this series. And I said, Aisha, we're thinking about doing this and we need someone who can be an expert in voting. And do you know anyone? Not even thinking about her. I said, do you know anyone? And Aisha goes, I can do it. And I was like, Aisha, okay. And oh my God, how insane I was at that moment. And so fast forward, me and my team, we're putting together our website. We're getting all of our stuff together to market the event. And I ask everyone to give me the condensed version of the speaker's bio. And I'm like, okay, everybody give me a small version of the bio so that I can put it on the website. And I'm literally like small paragraph. I get a big full page of Aisha's, big full page. And I'm like, Kathy, I said a small part. And and she tells me, "Girl, did you read it?" And so I'm like, "Oh my God, I guess I gotta look at it." So I look at it, and I'm sitting here, and I remember it was our COVID office, my bedroom, and so I'm sitting here in my COVID office, and I'm looking over Aisha's accomplishments, and they were so dynamic. I literally started shaking. I had tears in my eyes. I was just like, oh my God, how amazing is this person? It was, it was, it was unreal. So I'm just going to give them a little tidbit. And my fear is that she's not going to tell you about herself fully. So I am going to also jump in where I need to, but I'm going to give you a little tidbit. So the main things that I want you guys to understand about Aisha is, if we had more Aishas in the world, we wouldn't even have the BLM movement. That's how strong of a force she is where she is. And she's kept over 4,000 kids out of the juvenile system in all of her years in government. She's created a police integrity group that that monitors the police, completely separate group. And then she created a integrity group that also monitors the sentencing of the judges. And if that's not enough, they also, her and her team, they go back in history to look to see where someone's been wronged. You guys, if we had more Aishas, this world will be we will be light years. And when I say we, I mean we as Americans, right? As Martin Luther King says, an injustice to anyone is an injustice to us all. So without further ado, because I can go on and on and on and on. Aisha, can you please tell them all about yourself?
Well, say a little bit, but my name is Aisha Braveboy, and I am fortunate to have been elected by the people of Prince George's County to serve as state's attorney. I'm the second woman to serve in this capacity in our county's history, and it is quite an honor, and it's a privilege, but it's a great responsibility, especially during this time. And when I say that, I just met with my team today. We have about 200 staff members who work for our office. And I was telling them today, there's a lot of challenges, it's not just about police reform, but it's also about prosecutorial reform and reform of the whole system, the criminal justice system. And it does present challenges for us because some look skeptically at the work that we do. But it also provides us a real good opportunity because now is the time to make change. So we've been making change. I was elected in 2018. I assumed office at the end of 2018. But my tenure actually, because I filled the tenure of someone who had left a little early to assume another position. So my tenure began in January of 2019. And I decided that I was not going to wait, that I was going to make changes as soon as I got there. Now, I couldn't make all the changes I wanted to at once, but I wanted to make change because you know what? The time is now. And when I say that, I look at where we are now in our history. And as you know, you have a president currently that wants to exercise all of their powers. And some might not like the powers in which our president wants to exercise or how he goes about exercising those powers. But the reality is when you are elected to office, you do have certain powers and you also have certain duties. And the duty is to act, and the duty is to act and be unafraid. Now, I like to say that I try to be compassionate and thoughtful with my actions, but I am not afraid to take on big challenges. One of the industries that has been a problem for people in my state and in my county is the bail industry. People who have, who are awaiting trial, being held pre-trial. Many of them who are held on for very serious offenses, we ask that they be held and stay in jail while they await their day in court. But for people who have less violent offenses, less serious offenses, who who also need to be brought to justice, but they can be safe in our communities while awaiting their trial. I didn't want money to be the reason why they languished in jail. And so, so my office no longer requests cash bail as a condition of release. Now, our judges and commissioners, if they want to issue a bail, we sometimes oppose it. We ask for alternative forms of pretrial supervision. But what we saw was that when we changed our policy, the courts behaved differently. I'm not saying that bail is completely done, because they still do issue bails, but the rate of issuance is down dramatically, and then the number of people who were held in our jail also dropped by nearly 100, just over about 10 short months. So again, what I recognize is that, in my capacity, I have the power to make change, and I have the power to influence. And that's what our voting is about too. So I'm bringing it back to our voting. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself if you want, but so in 1789, the Constitution of the United States granted the states the power to set voting requirements. And you know what? At that time, generally, states limited the right to vote for people who were property owners or tax-paying white males. And they only comprised about 6% of the population. Wow. But those were the individuals who were empowered to vote. And so if you think of it, we've always had not just a system of racism in our country, but also classism. So if you weren't a property owner, if you weren't a taxpayer, then you didn't have a right to say, how your government should be run. So that's a huge issue. So then in 1790, there was something called the Naturalization Act of 1790, which allows free white persons born outside of the United States to become citizens, but they weren't automatically granted the right to vote. And so then there's a series of actions that occurred in the late 17 and 1800s. And so at some point, between 1792 and 1856, the property qualifications for white men were abolished. And so now, if you were a white male, you could vote. Now, it wasn't until, so now, remember, we're talking about 1789. Now we're all the way up to 1856, where I guess regular white folks could vote. So then, in 1868, citizenship was granted to all male persons born or naturalized in the United States. So this is, not just white males, but Black males and other races. So now they are citizens, and that really set the stage for granting voting rights to men of other races. So the 15th Amendment that was passed in 1870 to the United States Constitution prevented states from denying the right to vote on the grounds of race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. So they're talking about people who were enslaved were now able to vote, but not all people who were enslaved, just the males, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is in 1870.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1887, citizenship is granted to Native Americans, but only those who are willing to disassociate from their tribe. And then
Mm-hmm.
they were eligible to vote. But you understand, again, this is just men.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this right to vote, right, it has been coveted since the beginning of the history and the foundation of the country that we know as America. Of course, we
Mm-hmm.
also know that the Native Americans were here before, those who came over to rule this country. But anyway, it wasn't until 1920 that women were guaranteed the right to vote by the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So that was very, think about it. It wasn't until 1920. And I know that might seem like a long time. I mean, it's been
No,
like
it
a
doesn't.
century, but it really isn't. It really
Mhm.
isn't. Um, and so, but as you know, even though African Americans were granted the right to vote, and now women in 1920 were also extended the right to vote because of Jim Crow laws and poll taxes and other measures to suppress and prevent people from voting. Um, Blacks really could not exercise fully their right to vote. And
Mhm.
so then we had a number of laws, voting rights laws, that came about in the 1960s. And so
Mhm.
in 1965, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. And it had the effect of trying to at least correct certain discrimination that had occurred in the voting process, like the poll taxes and also, intimidate voter intimidation at the polls. So even if you went to the polls, if they had if there were law enforcement present there, if there were people who were intimidating you and threatening to kill you or beat you or bringing weapons to the polls to prevent you from voting, that was, that really was prevented a lot of people from exercising their rights. So it wasn't until 1965. So think about it. We're talking about 1920 that women were guaranteed the right to vote. Before that, it was the 1870 that people of color, well, men of color, got the right to vote. But now we had to wait, so many years later, almost 100 years later, to actually get the protections to actually vote.
Wow.
Um, and so, and since then, there have been a number, unfortunately, of challenges to the Voting Rights Act. I know that in 2013, you heard about the Shelby versus Holder decision, which made parts of the voting right unconstitutional. And these were parts of the Voting Rights Act that really protected people's ability to have access to the polls, to not be redistricted unfairly, to prevent them from having a reasonable opportunity to select representatives of their choice. But here we are. Here we are in an era where everyone now has the right to vote. We have access to the ballot. We have more access now than ever. Because there's early voting in most states. There's vote by mail in most states.
Mhm.
I've worked very hard to extend voting rights for felons in my state. In fact, even those being held on pretrial detention, because they are presumed innocent, they are not felons, they have the right to vote. So we just launched this week Operation Protect the Vote for All. And we mean those behind the wall too. And
Good.
so we had ballots delivered to the jail, our local jail, last week. We had a voter registration drive that started today, so that individuals could register in the jail, and they can also request absentee ballots. And so we're working with our Board of Elections to ensure that they have that ability. And then those who are not felons, who are serving out misdemeanor sentences, they too have the right to vote. And so we're making sure that they, again, can exercise their rights, because this is an unprecedented election. I think you can't have, and I know we're not going to get too political here, but I don't think you can have candidates that are where their positions and how they conduct themselves and what they stand for is more different. And so it really, so we want everyone to feel empowered, and your vote is your power. And if no one believes that, because people say, well, I don't believe that I need to vote, and oh, y'all, nothing ever changes. This is not important. Think about how long it took to get voting rights in this country, and think about all of the barriers that people put up for people to vote, because guess what? They did not want your voice to be heard. They only wanted the voice to be heard, remember, in 1789, not just any white male, but property owners and taxpayers, and which at that time would represent, those who were elite, those who, were wealthy. And so today, we all have a responsibility to ensure that those who are elected reflect all of us. So if only wealthy people are voting, or only people of a certain race are voting, then that means that the issues that are important to you and me don't get addressed. I will say that one of the things that has been just amazing that people have seen in this country, and it's why Black women in particular are really looked at as a strong voting base, is because we recognize our power in our vote. We work on campaigns, we run for office, but we come out and vote. The AARP, which is, of course, the leading organization for older Americans, which I'll be eligible for in a few years. But they did a survey. They did a survey of people, of Black women aged 50 and over, and they asked the question, "Are you going to vote?" What the poll showed was that 94% of the respondents plan to vote. 94%. And that is reflective of Black women voters in this country. Black women have outvoted every other demographic group since the election of Barack Obama. Okay. And Black women, and men too, so I don't want to leave the men out, but Black women, because we are the single demographic that votes the most, and votes kind of along the same lines the most, that you can almost, like, you've got to win that group of voters, right? But there's power in that. And our responsibility is not just to vote, but then to put our agenda on the table. And I can tell you, as the state's attorney for Prince George's County, the wealthiest, most affluent African-American majority county in the country, I can tell you, because we're not, it's not all wealthy, right? We do have parts that are not. But what I can tell you is that the areas in our county where I see wealth, where I see more prosperity, those are generally areas where you can live safely. Areas where we have poverty, areas where we have a lack of investment, that's where we see our crime, our high crime areas. And we know it's not just because of wealth, but wealth plays a role, because wealth gives you access to mental health services and other health services. Wealth gives you access to education. Wealth gives you access to opportunity. And so what we have to do is not only vote, but say we need to have an agenda based on wealth, because wealth, to me, based on what I have seen in my role, really determines the safety and security of our communities, which ultimately will determine, what our investment or how much we make off of investing in our communities in terms of our housing or where we place our businesses. If we're able to have safer communities, if we're able to grow wealth and have opportunities in our communities, then our homes become huge investments for us.
Mm-hmm.
We can place our businesses near our homes and we have a better quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So this issue that you guys are dealing with right now, this issue of wealth and really educating the masses about the importance of Black wealth is so critical to the future of our country and the safety of our community. So I'm grateful to be here. I know you might have some questions for me. I'm happy to answer them. And thank
Okay,
you.
good. Well, you guys can type your questions in the chat box, but my question that I want to start with, because right now, a lot of us are out there protesting and we're protesting in different ways. So my main question is, when the women got the right to vote in 1920, are you aware of what they were doing? Were they making it convenient for the guys to just exist? Were they out there causing a ruckus? What were they doing?
The women were marching. The women were marching. But remember, it was still an era in our country where there was a lot of division. So even though Black women were a part of that women's right march, oftentimes they were put in the back. They weren't allowed to speak. So yeah, but yes, I mean the women said this is the law. We changing laws right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. And then the when we got the right to vote, what was what was the political climate at that time?
Well, remember it's also political, right? And it's also geographical, because what happened was, because slavery existed as an industry primarily in the South ended up having more people, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a balance of power issue, because if you gave the South everyone voting rights, then the South would end up being having a lot more power to determine, national elections and this and that. So it was, and so that's why not just the South, but the North too. That's why they didn't really, even though they extended the voting rights, they didn't really necessarily want people to vote. And so that's why we ended up having our Jim Crow laws and poll taxes and other things to prevent people from being able to vote.
They wanted to take advantage of all the people. They just didn't want the responsibility of actually listening to the people.
Well, they didn't want to have to. They did not want to have to have their election be based on your choice, your decision, what your values were.
Got it. And Aisha, right now there's still some voter suppression going on, but it feels like it shouldn't be. It feels like there are a lot of things that are happening that shouldn't be. What can we do in terms of that? Like, what can we do right now today to minimize that?
Yeah. Shut the noise out. There's a lot of what I call high-tech voter suppression. So you'll get these emails talking about how, voting by mail is not secure. It is very secure. People should vote by mail. In fact, in this last primary season, there was record voter turnout in many counties and states across the country because people did vote by mail. And so you can safely vote by mail. And that's why, and again, not to get too political, folks want to come after the post office, because people want to come after the post office because they want you to think that there's something wrong with it. So there's something wrong with you voting by mail. So you're not going to vote by mail. But if you're in a state like mine or a county like mine where we still have problems with COVID, you're not going to want to also go to the polls to vote because it's unsafe, right?
Yeah.
And so what they're really asking you to do is basically stay home and do nothing. Okay,
Oh,
and that's unacceptable. So
right.
the trolls that will tell you that voting by mail is not going to work, ignore it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then you also get these like signals like, oh, well, the vote's going to be rigged. You hear people saying the voting is going to be rigged. I'm not saying who, but that's a
We hear
form
it.
of voter suppression. That's a form of voter suppression because that is a message being sent that if it's said enough times, people start to believe it. And
Right.
so what I say to people is just do it old school, vote. I tell people to vote by mail because it is really difficult often to go to the polls and vote. Like in our state, I don't know how it is in other states. Even if you don't want to vote by mail because you're concerned about your vote being counted, you can order a ballot, have that ballot mailed to your home, and then you can drop it off at the Board of Elections. That's another way of ensuring that it gets there.
Yeah.
But vote. That's what I would say. Just like you gotta vote. And
Yeah.
the more people try to prevent you from voting, that's when you know this election is even more important than most of us realize, you know. And so I'm
Mhm.
hopeful that everyone knows that they need to exercise their rights.
Got it. Now, is there any particular way to vote by mail? Because I always vote in person. So what if we want
Yeah,
to go from voting in person to voting by mail? How do
sure.
we change that world?
Well, every state has their rules, so I can't speak for every single state. But generally, most states have a board of elections. That state board of
Mhm.
elections has a website, and it will tell you how to vote by mail. And it's kind of similar around every state. The timing to order your absentee ballots may be different based on the state in which you live, but you just essentially fill out an application to request an absentee ballot. That ballot is then mailed to your home. And then once you get it, you can fill it out. You can mail it back, or you can take
Mhm.
it back to the Board of Elections. In our state, we actually have drop off boxes around our counties. And so that's what we're doing. But there are several different ways.
Mhm. Okay, good. Now, if you so what do you think is really, it sounds like what you're saying is people in the future should really just plan to vote by mail. That's the most safest and secure way. And I even remember hearing something that more Democrats even vote by mail. Like it's a big thing. And and then what? So if we are voting by mail, that automatically reduces some of this voter suppression because that's usually done in person. That's usually intimidation of your body, right?
Yeah, or having not delivering enough ballots to a particular voting site, or the voting machines aren't working that day. You know, there's so
Hmm.
many reasons why votes aren't counted on election day. And I'm not saying people shouldn't show up and vote if that's what they want to do, but what I'm saying is that there are alternatives, and I hope that people will choose, you know, the alternative that works best for them.
So it's and also I'm just creating ideas because the goal is the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah.
So it also sounds like moving, like the safer, not the safer, the easier we can make it for people to be able to mail in votes, the better. Because again, people like me, we just go to the polls. We have friends that I have a cousin, she volunteers at the polls. We do that. That's our world. We spend 3 hours in that line and we do that. But if more of us are aware of just voting by mail, like we don't have to do the 3 hour sacrifice. And I think there's just a lot of confusion about voting by mail for younger people. I really do.
Well, I think that was by design, though. I think that
Mhm.
there were messages being sent from leaders
Yeah.
questioning the ballot. There was efforts even to reduce the level of service at the post office. So of
Well,
course, people are going to question voting by mail, um,
mhm.
but 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 it's because it's effective that certain people don't want you to vote by mail.
Wow, that makes sense. Now, if you can design the world any way you want to be, what does the future of voting look like for you? And what's the utopia?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you know, and I haven't decided yet if I think that voting online is 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 I think it should be the wave of the future. I'm just concerned about the security of a purely online system. I do believe, though, that if we could vote securely online, then we should be able to vote online. I think, and I actually think that everyone should be able to vote, including those who are serving out sentences for felonies too. And I say that because, even though that person might have committed a very heinous crime, if they are in jail, they are no longer in a position to cause us harm. I am not about retribution. I'm just about, ensuring that people get the justice they deserve and get the punishments they deserve. I think if you commit a serious crime, you should be punished and you should spend the appropriate amount of time incarcerated. But whether or not you vote, whether or not you have access to education, whether or not you have access to job training, why is that my issue? I don't have an interest in that. I just have an interest in my safety. And so I think that is an area where we need to expand. And the other thing is, if we do expand voting rights to people who are incarcerated, it empowers them, actually, I think, to request the things that they want. Oftentimes people ignore the jail population and the prison population because they don't vote. Yeah. But if they start voting, then they can start having a voice. So they can say what services they need in the jail. They can say, what type of dietary, options they should have. And we would start paying a lot more attention, I think, to those who are incarcerated. One of the things that I've done is I created, when you were talking about the Conviction and Sentencing Integrity Unit, that unit is doing a lot of work around juvenile lifers. And we have been able to have several juvenile lifers released from prison. And when I'll just tell you about the first person who came out as a result of our office's intervention. He's a great a young man. I call him young because he's about a year older than me, so we're going to still say young, even though but he was incarcerated for a crime he committed at the age of 16. When he was released, he was 46. He was a completely different person, someone who you would love to have a conversation with, someone who wants to help others who was in his position. But there's not a whole lot of difference between him and some of the others who are in prison right now. He just got that opportunity because he had a state attorney who said, I'm committed to working with this population. But there are other people who are in other jurisdictions that don't have that benefit. But that doesn't mean that person is a terrible person, that there's no redemption. And if we think that people can be redeemed, if we think that that certain people deserve second chances, let's not take away rights that are so basic, like the right to vote. Yeah, got it. And I love that you're seeing the humanity. And I think that part of that desire to keep that the Black group underrepresented is through the prison system and making it a felon. Once you have a felony, you can't vote. That's why it's so easy for young kids to get felonies. It really is. Well, in certain states, like in mine, we say if you finish your period of incarceration, then you can get your voting rights restored. But that's state by state, and it should be something that's universal. But like I said, I think that the government and the community would actually benefit from those who are incarcerated having a voice, right? Absolutely. They're away from us. They can't hurt us. They can't. But most of the people who are in prison return to the community. So at some point, they're going to have those rights restored. But the question is, how do they behave while they're in prison? What services are available for them? And who cares about that population? And that's why I think having voting rights in prisons doesn't mean that anyone gets released any earlier. It just means that they are citizens too. They should not lose those basic rights. And so it is it's just something that I think we need to talk about and work on.
I think we absolutely should. Now, how do we get more people like you? How do we find the people like you to even get in the system? And I know I can't. Am I the only one that thinks that? You guys let me know if we need more Aishas, because I feel like we need more Aishas in the running. And I'm just like, how do we find them? What do we do?
You know what, just by supporting us, because if I can say, look, I've got support from around the country from folks like you, then I think it'll encourage other people to want to run. Because one of the things that actually holds people back from running is finances. Because if you're unable to raise the money and you're not independently wealthy, it's tough to run elections. I think I spent close to $200,000 in my race. I didn't spend my own money. I mean, I was able to raise money. But if I decide to run for another office, or even just the same office, I still have to fundraise. I still have to make sure that I'm competitive so I can get my message out. So I think one of the things that's really important, and that's why wealth is so important, because I want to be able to come to people like you and say, hey, here's my platform. Here's what I want to do. I need your support. You'll buy into that. I go to someone else. They may not care about people who are incarcerated. They may not care about bail reform or other. That's not their issue. Nope. But for us, this is an issue, because it's our cousins, it's our mothers, fathers, husbands in some cases. So yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. Is the chat room, are you guys able to chat anything? Because I'm not seeing any movement, and I'm sure somebody had a question for Aisha. I can't imagine. They are? Okay, good. All right. Yeah, Aisha, I think that's, I think you're absolutely right. And if Black women are the biggest, the strongest bloc, and we have another speaker who you didn't get to meet yet, Dr. Michael Dawson, who's going to be talking about us in politics. But if we are that strongest bloc, we probably should be having our own representation that we're financing and supporting and pushing through, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
like everybody else.
It's extremely important. It's extremely, and I will say that I'm not being political. I'm just saying who is running. But I think one of the reasons why Kamala Harris is where she is because of the support of Black women and the voting strength of Black women, and the fact that they want Black women to vote and come out in large numbers. And so I think it's a real reflection, not just of her skills and abilities, because she's absolutely brilliant, absolutely ready on day one, but it's also a reflection of the power that we have exercised over the past at least 10 plus years, since the election of Barack Obama, when finally people started to notice us as voters.
You know, somebody was mentioning, is electronic voting a secure way of voting? We don't have it yet, right? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Aisha, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. You froze up for a sec.
Yeah, you froze too. We froze. Somebody was saying, is electronic voting a secure way of voting? We don't have electronic voting yet, do we? Right. But you know what? I feel like that would be so secure, because my face opens my phone. So why can't my face make me vote?
Yeah, I think it's just it would be vulnerable to a lot of malware and other kind of, viruses and other. So I'm not there yet in thinking that we can safely vote electronically, because I think there's just so much opportunity for interference. If you look at what Russia did in our last election, what they're trying to do in this election, I just think that, again, I think we're just opening ourselves up before we really have the tools to secure our voting system. So right now, I would be opposed to it. In the future, I think it is a good idea if we can have a secure system.
Yeah. Now, somebody was asking, where can you request a mail-in vote? How does that work?
Board of Elections. So wherever you live, you can request it from your state Board of Elections.
Okay, so just Google your state board of election. And then is it true that people can drop their mail ballot at the polls on election day, or is that too late?
In Maryland, yes, you can. I'm assuming every state has their rules. It's probably listed on their website, but yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so you got to check your state. And another question for Lake is, why do you think there's such voter apathy, and how do we get past it? And then she has another part.
Well, I think because voters, this is a tough time. I mean, think about it. I mean, people are dealing with pandemics. People are dealing with the loss of job, lack of finances. This is a tough time. I don't know that we are apathetic. Generally, like I could say, at least Black voters have been very active voters, but there are people who feel disaffected by politics. There are people who don't recognize the power of their own vote, or they have not been in a situation where they felt like their vote mattered, and that's really sad. Actually,
Very
I feel
sad.
bad for people who don't vote, because that means that you feel disempowered, like you have no power, and that's simply not true. And so,
Yeah.
so I think, I can't say why every single person doesn't vote, but I can at least say that, Black women have certainly decided that we're going to exercise our power, and we're doing so in grand style.
Yeah, and you know what? I would, if I can interject too, Falake, I would say it's more of almost a confusion slash ignorance, because I think you've been present to politics a lot longer than I've been present to politics, and I think one of the things that happened with all of us is we literally thought that politics didn't affect us. We literally thought it. We thought it. We were like, oh, it doesn't matter. The president doesn't affect me. I'm good. I'm going to vote Scooby Doo. It doesn't matter. No big deal. And now we saw, with us all dealing with our different sentence of house arrest that we're in, that it actually does affect us. So I think that now we've all, we had a big old cup of wake up, and we're like, we're in it now, and I think one of the things that you and I talked about before that I think is something that I wasn't present to, is that you said that it's not enough to vote. You really got to be active. And there's a quote from Toni Morrison. She was saying, voting is the rent that you pay for living in America. But I don't even think it's just voting. I think it's just being active. If you're awake enough to pay attention, you need to be awake enough to have a voice. Like, you need to just push it a little step further. So we all voted for Barack Obama and went on vacation. We were like gone, like bye. And we shouldn't have. Like, the level of interest that we all have right now, if we had that back then, this would be a different world, but it was just you by yourself talking to the air. Because we were on vacation. So we, now we're just like, oh my gosh. All right. And what else? Oh, and she was also saying, you're doing a great job in Maryland, Falake. What are your thoughts on KG, AG, and others? KG, Kentucky AG? Is that what you mean, Falake?
Oh, the Kentucky AG.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say, his job is tough. Any case, and I've had cases. I've tried cases. My office has where we're holding officers accountable for very serious offenses. That we have an officer under indictment right now on second-degree murder. We've tried officers for excessive use of force, for sexual assault, rape, a number of different things. The standard, when you look at the use of force standard, the use of force standard is really set in case law by a Supreme Court case called Graham versus Connor. And that case essentially says that an officer can use a force that is objectively reasonable. That is the standard in the law. And so an officer can use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes, objectively, but reasonably believes that their life is in danger, or that they are in danger of serious bodily harm. That's the standard in the law. Now, when you apply that law, that Supreme Court decision, to the facts in cases that come before any prosecutor's office, we are limited by that case law. So unless the legislature has set other standards of how police can exercise force, if an individual uses deadly force and they can say it was objectively reasonable for me to do so at the time the force is used, that's the standard, at the time the force is used, not what happened before, not what happened after. At the time the force is used, was it reasonable? That is the law. So when you look at a case like the case in Kentucky, and I had a similar case, not exactly, it wasn't a search warrant case, but it was a case where an individual was killed by officers, and but in that case they had a weapon that they were charging towards the officers. It was a different set of circumstances. But if you look at this case, what they probably looked at is the fact that the boyfriend had a gun and had shot at the officers when they entered. They claimed that they did a knock and then entered. I don't know. I wasn't there, whatever. But they entered the property. The boyfriend had a gun. He shot at the officers, and then the officers returned fire. At the time the officers are returning fire, technically, they're returning it because they feel like their life is threatened. And that is unfortunately the standard of the law. And that's probably why the two officers who shot inside of the apartment, they were not charged. The person who shot outside of the apartment was charged because he was shooting recklessly. Like, he wasn't actually shooting at any target that was a threat. And so that's what you have to do. Now, my concern, and again, I don't know every fact of the case. I don't know exactly where Breonna Taylor was standing, but my confusion about that whole case was, well, why did she die? Because she was not the threat. She was not the one with the gun. It was the boyfriend who had the gun. So actually, you did not stop the threat because he was still the threat. He still had a gun. So, again, not being inside that grand jury room, not knowing all of the facts of the case, just what, you and I probably have heard the same things. I understand why the grand jury may have found the way it did. I'm not saying it was a good, I don't think it was a good outcome, but I can understand from a legal perspective why the grand jury did not indict. What I would say is that I do have concerns about things like how, and this is what I would question if I were the AG, how did they get the search warrant in the first place? Because it was, I think from all the reports, this was not her current boyfriend, but an ex-boyfriend who was the subject of and the target of their investigation. They had not been together for some time, and he did not implicate her in his crimes. So my concern is that they had a search warrant at all. And that's why in my office, we have instituted an enhanced review of search warrants, because we want to prevent unnecessary contacts with innocent people. There were no drugs found in her apartment. They believed somehow that there may be drugs that are being, delivered to her apartment, but they didn't have any evidence of that. And certainly there was no evidence on the scene. So I don't really know how they obtained the search warrant, why they decided to execute it. I feel like this whole thing could have been avoided. And that's another thing that we have to look at in terms of our laws. Do we need to create new standards in the law? Because if the standard, which is very law enforcement friendly, that's a very law enforcement friendly standard. The standard is, if at the time you use this force, it is objectively reasonable for you to do so, then you're good. That is the standard. And we need to work really hard at the federal level. I know there's some discussions around legislation that would change that standard that we can pass federally. And there's some discussions in different states around changing that standard as well. I hope I didn't bore you all with that legal explanation, but I mean, it's such it's such an important issue. So I would say that all to say, like, when we had to decline to prosecute a case involving a death of a civilian, what I did was I not only explained what the grand jury's decision, but I also had a use of force expert do a 40-page report and walk through every single part of the case, because I wanted the public to know that the decision wasn't made because anyone was cozy with the local police department, but the decision was made because based on the law, this was the appropriate outcome based on the law. But are we satisfied with the outcome? And I said to the public, the answer is no. And we actually gave a list of recommendations to our county government, as well as our the three local law enforcement agencies who responded to the incident. And so we gave them a list of, I think, about 8 or 9 recommendations on what they need to do to prevent these types of horrific incidents from happening. So if this is a tough job, let me tell you, you're not going to make everybody happy sitting in the position of state's attorney or attorney general, whatever, because there are always going to be people who question your judgment or question your motives and things like that. But I try to be just transparent because I have nothing to hide. I'm a straight shooter. I've always been that way. I don't care who supported me for what election. I'm going to do what's right, period.
Yeah.
But I have to do that within the confines of the law, because that is what guides me.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know we're talking about voting, but this ultimately affects votes. I mean, this affects our lives, who we have that makes the decisions on these people. And you know, my not to get too far off topic, and but my thing is this: it's too many. I see too many accidents when it comes to Black people. I don't see those same accidents with white people. So I almost want to say my rule of law would be, if you did it to someone white, then it's good. If you didn't, then it don't count. You get to go to jail. But that's just my, if I was the queen of the world, which I am not yet. But that was really thoughtful and a different way of thinking at it, Aisha. Thank you for that, because it does help us look at it at a different way. And we all, we all want to understand better what's going on, so that we can get more amazing people in the offices. And, and I'm joking, but I'm serious. It's happening too much to Black people. It's not.
It is. And what is happening, it's happening also, and what I was going to say is it's happening to Black people for very minor offenses. Pretty much all of the either excessive force incidents that have occurred or the deaths that have occurred, when you look at the reason why the person was stopped or detained, it was for a misdemeanor. Okay, there's a guy named Sir Robert Peel, who's known as the father of, modern day policing. And basically his belief, his thoughts were that police should find ways of not having to interact or engage citizens other than in a positive way, right? So if someone is committing an infraction, unless it's a felony,
right, of course,
they should serve them a summons, right? So they should charge by summons, not charge them and then drag them down to the jail, process them, and all of those things, right? Yeah. His thought is that, you know what, just like you would get a traffic ticket, if you have your ID, they give you the ticket, they'll give it in the mail. Similar to that, if you're committing something that's not considered a felony, if you're not committing a violent act, then there are other ways to engage you and to bring you to justice. So we have to look at alternative ways of dealing with people, because someone who may have suspected to be passing a fake $20 bill should not end up dead. Because that is not a misdemeanor. That is not a felony, even if it were true, which at this point, who cares? But
it doesn't matter.
But all of the other incidents, as you may recall, just name almost all of them, even our soror,
down in Texas.
It was, she's in jail because of a traffic issue. You see what I'm saying? And that is where we need to stop, that's when they call it disproportionate minority contact. That's where we don't need that level of contact between police and residents. Give me my citation and keep it moving. Now, oftentimes,
like you said,
oftentimes they say, well, this person was uncooperative. So we see a lot of this. Someone was
Yeah.
uncooperative. They were disorderly. Well, why were they disorderly? Because they had a problem with maybe how you spoke to them when you approached their vehicle. You did not give them information when they asked you for it. And now you're in a back and forth with a civilian. Then it escalates, and now it's a disorderly, it's resisting arrest, it's possibly
Yeah.
a police officer. And to me, a lot of those cases, we screen those cases and oftentimes dismiss those cases against the civilian because we realize it was the officer that instigated some of these negative interactions. So, I mean,
Wow.
it's no, but it's serious. You gotta have people, I'm not just saying like me, because I'm not the only one. Okay, but you
Mhm.
have to have people who are willing to speak truth to power, who are courageous enough
Mhm.
to stand up. Um,
Yeah.
that's what we need to do, and a lot of times, like Black women, and you'll see us prosecutors around the country. I mean, we're the ones on the forefront. We're the ones fighting. We're the ones taking the hits. We're the ones taking all the
Yeah.
criticism. But you know what? We keep moving
Yeah.
because change doesn't happen because people say, okay, now we want change. No, you have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like power concedes nothing. So
Yeah. So, one of the questions is, I always struggle researching judges during election time. Any recommendations on how to best know the judges that you're voting for?
honestly, I don't know how to tell you because it's not like this. Now, I know my judges in the courtroom, but before
Mhm.
I was in this position, I probably couldn't tell you much about the judges either, just to be honest with you. I mean, you probably can research their background, where they went to school, their experience prior to becoming a judge. But in terms of what how their decisions, whether or not they issue a whole lot of bail or not, and whether or not they sentence people to crazy terms, there's no like database, I don't think, at least not in Maryland. I don't know about in other states where you can actually review judges' decisions. So it is actually a very interesting issue in terms of trying to research judges, and oftentimes they don't really campaign. So you
Yeah.
don't even really get to hear from them on the campaign trail. So
Mhm.
so I think the only way you're going to really start learning more about your judges is if more people start running. In
That'll be awesome.
in some states, there are what's called retention elections, which means if you're appointed by the governor or whoever the appointing authority is, and you run for re-election, or when your term is up, you run for what's called a retention election. So people can either
Mhm.
say, yes, we want to retain you, or no, we don't want to. And if they say, no, we
Mhm.
don't want to, then the governor would appoint someone else. But the
Uh-huh.
contested elections give people an opportunity to run against judges. So we have contested elections at our circuit court
Uh-huh.
level here in Maryland. And this time around in our primary, we had a number, especially in our county, a number of African American women who ran against quote unquote the sitting judges, and two of them won the Democratic primary. But all of the judges, even those who didn't win the Democratic primary because they won the Republican primary, everyone goes to the general election. But those who were running talked about their platform, talked about what they wanted to do. And I think we have to put judges in a position to be more responsive to their communities. And the only way you do that, honestly, I think, is through having contested elections.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you have to fight, you have to compete. When people get comfortable, it's no good. So we're going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to have to let you go so we can do our little short part, because we know that this was the most important thing that we could have. I think this one is a good question. Can you explain the purpose of the electoral vote?
The electoral, so there's electors. I don't know. I don't know the history of having electors, but essentially each state is apportioned a certain amount of electors based on the size of their state. And then those electors essentially are supposed to go and, represent the will of their state when the official election takes place, which is when the electors meet. So honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with the entire history of that. That's actually an
Got it.
interesting question, so I will research that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's the general gist of it.
Okay, got it. All right. Aisha, what do you want us to think? What do you want us to think about? How do you want us to position ourselves like moving forward? What's your instruction on how we can be, what we can do to help Black Lives Matter, what we can do to help our allies, everyone? Like, what can we do moving forward?
You know what I would really like to do, and hopefully maybe you and I, Saria, since you're an expert in
We
wealth, and
will.
I'm
We're doing it.
I'm an expert in criminal justice. Maybe we really need to really talk about that intersection, like why wealth matters so much to everything, you know, especially for Black people. And the fact is that people listen to people who are wealthier because they
They
think,
do.
you know, and it's sad, but I even notice it when I'm when you know, people are campaigning. They campaign in areas where they think people are going to vote, and so they campaign in the wealthier areas because they know more people are voting in those areas, and they're not campaigning in
Mhm.
the areas that are more economically depressed. And so I think, but when those areas are who are not economically depressed, or who are economically depressed, don't participate in the votes, then it's really difficult for their issues to be addressed, for that
Right.
redevelopment to be targeted to their community for them. Now they'll redevelop that community, but then they'll gentrify it, as opposed to
Right.
redeveloping the community for the people who live there. And so I
Right.
think
Right.
it's just really important that we really talk about, you know, wealth. We talk about the criminal justice system and public safety, and how there is that relationship between wealth and safety, and how we need to continue to grow our wealth, because we will be safer as a society when people feel like they have you know, more options, when people have access to health care. You know, that's just going to make us a stronger society. So I'd love to work
Absolutely.
on something like that with you. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag change the world. All right. Okay. Aisha, so you guys, we need more Aishas. And like she said, voting, campaigning is not cheap or free. So if you want to contribute to her campaign, it's right here in the sticky note. Every little bit counts. Absolutely. She appreciates it all. And then also, if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote at vote.org. And thank you, Aisha. And what I would like to do is talk about money. And if you want to stay in, Aisha, you're more than
I'll cut
welcome.
off my camera, but I'll stay.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So you guys, that was awesome. That gave us some good direction, and I hope you guys understand that I like to joke a little bit. I'm serious, but it's joking. So okay, so you guys, let's talk about money. So let me just get my thoughts together. So she was talking about voting in politics, and it absolutely does affect our wealth at the bottom line. It absolutely does. As a matter of fact, I'll give you some examples. There's a mayor named Michael Tubbs out here in California, and he gave a $500 stipend to all the residents of his city, and crime went down, attendance went up at school, job stability. I mean, it really gave people more of a peace of mind. Trump created a tax break for the wealthy, right? Chicago, where I'm from, we're completely overtaxed in terms of just the smallest little things. So the way we vote can get those people in or out. So voting directly impacts our wealth, and it's absolutely it's power. But it's not enough to vote. It is now it has to be a lifestyle. So again, my name is Saria, and I have the privilege of talking money with you guys. And what I want to do is I'm going to be sharing three things. I'm going to be sharing how we service our company, because I know you guys are interested in learning about Black wealth. So I'm going to tell you how we help create Black wealth and wealth for everyone. So I'm going to tell you how we service our company. I'm going to give you some tools. So if you never come again, you're going to have some financial literacy tools that you can use moving forward. So take notes. And my favorite part of this business is how to create more wealth with this company so that we can have a bigger voice at the polls. And speaking of opportunity in finance, our team did a search to find out the percentage of Blacks that even major in finance in college, and we could not find a number. That's how small that number is. So for example, I graduated with a degree in finance, and it was maybe, I was the only Black woman in my school. There were maybe 3 Black men, and it was 100+ students. Forbes did a study in June of 2018 that said that 58% of current Black and Latino financial advisors never even thought about finance as a career. And this might be your truth as well. However, I think right now is a good a time as any for Blacks to be put on the map in terms of creating a financial revolution. And what makes us unique in this company is that we do help everyone plan for the future, not just the wealthy. So as you're listening, you guys, I want you to keep in mind just 3 things. Do you know anyone that can benefit from this information? Could it help you or someone that you know? Or if you're interested in building a financial service business. So business ownership in the Black community is a reemerging concept because most of us were taught to go to college and become professionals like doctors and lawyers. And more of you probably consider being a business owner than finance as a career. However, I invite you to consider finance as a business now. And plus, we have a system to help build strong businesses, and you combine that with education about how money works, and that, you guys, will change generations as well as right now. And when thinking about a business and being a business owner, there are responsibilities. Business owners do have responsibilities. They have payroll, they have marketing, they have bookkeeping, HR, all that. We take care of it. But there are still some things that are important for you to consider. So do me a favor. There's a poll. I want you guys to go to the poll button. So click the poll button, and I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. But do you believe that people need more financial education? If you believe they need more financial education, click yes or no. If you don't think they need more financial education, do you guys see the poll button on your screen? Click yes or no. Okay, good. All right. Now let's end that poll. Do you guys believe that people need help planning for their future? Okay, you get 30 seconds, you guys. Do you believe people need help planning for their future? All right. And then the last question is, do you guys believe that people need to make extra money while paying less in taxes legally? All right, perfect. So all of those answers were pretty much yes. And that just answers the basic questions about supply and demand. There is a demand. So right now we need more of a supply. Now, in terms of an effective business platform, we have a simple system. And to explain a system, I want you guys to think of a McDonald's. They are one of the most lucrative businesses in the world, and the company runs on robots and young people. So using our system, many agents have changed their lives through this company, and there are endless opportunities. But what if you're already in your dream profession? You know, that's great, right? And it's great for you, but what about your family members who aren't at your level? Our system allows anyone to build a successful business, no matter their background. And as a result, we have people from the mortgage industry, New York Times bestselling authors, homemakers, NFL Hall of Famers, taxi drivers, anyone with a desire to win here can. And wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to expose your family members to that? Because most people don't need a handout, they need a handout. They just need help, right? In terms of powerful compensation, in college, we're taught to be employees. or create our own practice, right? But we all know that real independence comes from being a business owner with systems and having investments that create cash flow. So as a company, we want to transition people from the employee self-employed mindset to that of a business owner, where you can create that passive residual income to free up time and use it however you want. We know that there is no shortage of hard workers, especially in this room tonight. But the good news is that here in finance, there's no limits. So here, your hard work will equal dollars in your pockets, which is good. And great timing. Timing is everything. You guys, COVID and the BLM movement have created such an awareness of why we need to impact our families and communities and the world. This is a perfect time to plan for that next chapter of your life, be it financial planning, a career change or addition, refinancing your mortgage, buying a home, paying off your debt, or being a consistent activist. This is the best time to make a change, because right now there's a worldwide reboot. And then in terms of strong core values, let's talk about that and our culture. So we focus on personal growth, family, as a matter of fact, we encourage working with your family. No different than Sam Walton of Walmart, or Mixed Chicks, the hair company with the two best friends, or Chase, JP Morgan Chase and his family banking system. So this isn't politics. This is business. So there's no politics. There's no glass ceilings, because you're creating your own environment. And here are some statistics that talk about the need. And unfortunately for the Black community, these numbers are even worse. And in the interest of time, how many of you guys have felt these emotions when you go through financial hardship? The Black community feels this more often than not, because even when you are well compensated, you have more financial responsibilities, like helping support other members of your family, paying off student loan debt, being a one-income household, being paid less on the dollar, you name it. There are so many things out of our control, but money shouldn't be. And we help you build a strong business to give you more control over your money and your cash flow. So in terms of wealth, some of us believe that wealth is shiny things, but financial independence requires discipline and the ability to determine needs versus wants. So we guide our clients to help create healthy financial habits. Elizabeth Warren, she lobbied on Capitol Hill against the credit card companies and created a concept called the healthy budget. And we use it for our clients and our associates today. The healthy budget is a habit of paying yourself first. Good habits are what leads to generational wealth, just like bad habits lead to poverty. And financial independence, if you ever hear that term, financial independence is where you work because you want to work, not because you have to. But how do you create financial independence? We believe we can help. We have a complimentary financial needs analysis, and many of you have already signed up to learn more. And we can put our link up right now under the offers tab, so you can actually schedule some time with us. So the way the process works is you use the link to schedule about a 15-minute Zoom. And that's going to be where the advisor will match you up with someone for our team. The next meeting will build on some of the concepts you learned about right now that I'm about to teach you. And then we'll help you commit to a strategy moving forward. But no business is done in the first meeting. Again, it's right under the offers. So then we'll meet you again with some ideas and some strategies and create a financial needs analysis. There's no cost for our services. We're compensated by the families, by the companies we place our business with. But we do ask for referrals if we do a good job. And every appointment is rooted in financial education. So now you're going to learn some basic concepts that we teach our clients and our associates. And we recommend that you do take notes and you try to implement these practices immediately. This is my favorite, the rule of 72. So the rule of 72 is about compound interest. We all want our money to compound and double and grow and all that good stuff. But most people aren't really sure how it works. So how it works is you divide 72 by the interest rate of whatever your investments is getting, and it'll give you approximately how long it takes for your money to double. So let's say the bank is giving you 2% and you're 35 years old with about $20,000. 36 years later, you'll be 70 and you'll have about $40,000. Is that really good? Or let's say you're getting 6%. That means every 12 years, your money doubles. So in 48 years, you'll have about $163,000. But how many of us have 48 more years? Now, keep in mind that rule of 72 can work for you and against you. So for example, 25% credit card balance, that doubles every 3 years. A 12% car loan doubles every 6 years, 6% student loan every 12 years, 4% mortgage every 18 years. And speaking of credit, you guys are going to be very interested to learn how credit came about during our banking and our credit series. But back to this. So we have proven strategies to help people get out of debt while they're building wealth. And I want to share a quick story that just goes back to what we're talking about. There was an article written by a billionaire that said that if every newborn started with a $6,000 investment, it would close the wealth gap in the Black community. So for example, if we take 6,000 at 6%, in 70 years, that kid will have about $355,000. And that's a very conservative return. We have access to investments with higher returns if it fits your risk tolerance. But even in this hypothetical situation, as professionals, I automatically think about taxes, whereas most people think about the returns. But taxes are very important, as we're learning now. And we talked about time, so let's go over to taxes. So taxes are important. There are 3 ways that your money can be taxed, as you see from the slide. The wealthy focus on tax advantage products. In the Black community, there are a few roadblocks that affect access to these products. The biggest roadblock is financial literacy. Many people, business owners and employees, don't understand the importance of tax planning. Another roadblock is financial professionals, because financial professionals were constantly educated about how tax codes affects our investments, products, laws, all that, except we tend to only focus on the high net worth. And working with someone who relates to you and understands you is also important. So you have a choice in terms of taxes. You do. So my question is, would you rather pay taxes on the seed, or would you rather pay taxes on harvest? And most of you probably are familiar with a 401k or IRA. And in those situations, you are paying taxes on the harvest, where you don't know the tax rate and you have no control of the situation. But our wealthy clients are doing the exact opposite. They're paying the taxes on the small amount while still using tax benefits and deductions as a business owner and tax advantage products. So they're paying taxes on the small amount, deducting that, using tax benefits, and still putting their money into tax advantage products. So again, you do have a choice in terms of taxes, and you also have a choice who you partner with. And we would love to be your planning partner. And I love this, because one of the questions that we all should be asking ourselves, and I love this question: what products allow my money to grow, but still enables me to have access to it without a penalty of being taxed? That's a good question, isn't it? Wouldn't you like to know the answer? Because we'd love to share it with you. And in terms of a planning relationship, you guys, our service is a complimentary financial needs analysis to see where you are. And when we sit with you, we educate you about how money works to minimize being taken advantage of and making mistakes that cost you and your family time and money. When we create plans, we look at the following areas. The first is budgeting. It doesn't matter what you make if you can't manage your expenses. And because of systemic racism, we absolutely do need to make more to catch up. Absolutely. Proper protection. Did you know that insurance can be used as a savings vehicle where you don't have to pay any taxes on your gain? There are so many kinds of insurances. And just like your job isn't stable, neither is the insurance through your job. We all know that COVID is killing Blacks at higher rates along with police, but wouldn't it make sense to protect yourself and your families? And in regards to preserving wealth, a will and a trust not only protects you and your families, but it also gives you control of where your money is going. You can gift money to your family, your sorority, your fraternity, your university, church, and so on. That alone, Aisha, that alone would change a lot of communities if we really just got anchored in on life insurance and estate plans. And by the way, WFGIA does not offer legal services. You must work with your own tax professional. And debt. That is the story of everyone's life. There's good credit and there's bad credit. And also, you guys, having a high credit score and being debt free, that's not wealth. But having a bad credit score is a roadblock. So here we're going to create a healthy budget to help you minimize your debt while building your wealth and good money habits. Too often we think about the present and we forget about the future. And the future look different. You might want to retire at 65 and spend the rest of your days traveling the world. Or you might want financial independence right now, but you still love what you do, and you want to work just for fun. But none of that will happen if you don't actively build wealth, because it does not happen accidentally, right? And saving money in the bank is not creating wealth either. Emergency reserve, COVID has exposed the huge need for emergency reserve. So with short-term savings, you might fall into one or two buckets. You might have no savings, right? Because you've gone through it in the last 10 months. Or you might have too much savings in the bank where your money is missing the power of compound interest. As professionals, we want to make sure your money is working as hard for you as you're working for it. And we work with some of the best companies in America. I want you guys to type Y in the chat room if you recognize any of these companies. Just a quick Y. Because very often the average hardworking family doesn't have access to these companies because you need an advisor. And advisors usually have too high of a minimum in order for you to even be their clients. But we don't have those minimums here. We work with everyone. So, in closing, we want to thank you for joining us, and we would like to work with those of you who are committed to changing lives, be it your life or the lives of people around you. There are no ceilings, no politics, and amazing diversity. We are part of WFGIA, and we consider ourselves to be heroes. And that's why you saw the heroes in the commercial. And that stands for helping everyone rise out of poverty, despair, and ignorance. We are looking to create more heroes for more families and communities, and we consider it to be our responsibility to change the world. So to learn more about us, please go to our website, www.bwm educational series, Black Wealth Matters educational series.com. And please, please, please cover us on social media using the hashtag BWM series. And don't forget to sign up for one of our complimentary consultations, informationals, and invite your friends next time because we will be here. So thank you again for sharing your evening with us, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm raising the tide. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm raising the tide. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm raising the tide. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm raising the tide. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility, money, power, and respect.
I never thought I'd be an all-stars until
crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty. Fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty. Fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die, and the odds ain't looking too pretty.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
You ain't about it, we moving out. We go and get it and get it. Pull up in Bromers like Robins and Porsches, them engines is bigger and different.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
You ain't about it, we moving out. We go and get it and get it. Pull up in Bromers like Robins and Porsches, them engines is bigger and different.